There are some things you should never say out loud, no matter how enlightened you feel, no matter how eager you are to share what you've discovered. Not because you're being selfish, not because the world isn't ready, but because the sacred must be protected. Not everything is meant to be exposed to the winds of the world. And if you've walked far enough on your spiritual path, you've probably felt it, that strange heaviness after revealing too much. The energetic drain that follows telling someone about a practice you held close to your heart. That subtle feeling that something has been taken from you and you don't know how to get it back. It's not your imagination, it's energetic law. And if no one ever told you that, then this might be the most important message you've ever heard. There is a cost to spiritual disclosure. Every time you speak about something sacred, whether it's a ritual, a powerful vision, a mantra you received in meditation, you're not just telling a story. You're opening a door, an energetic door, one that links your inner world to the outer world, and depending on who's listening, that door can let in curiosity or chaos. You may think you're sharing light, but sometimes you're giving away your fire. When spiritual traditions across the ages warned students not to reveal certain teachings to the uninitiated, it wasn't about control, it was about protection, not just for the sacred teachings, but for the student, for you. Because once you speak a thing into the world, it takes on a life of its own, it leaves your field, it stops being just yours. And unless you're energetically prepared for what that creates, it can invite interference, misunderstanding, or even spiritual backlash. That's why ancient mystery schools swore their initiates to silence. That's why certain mantras were whispered only in secret. That's why real magic happens in silence, in solitude, in the stillness between the breath, far from the noise of validation or performance. Because what is sacred becomes diluted when it's treated like a performance. And here's what you must know. The universe listens, not passively but actively. Every word you speak is an act of creation. Every secret you release reshapes the field around you. Have you ever felt your energy shift after you told someone about a breakthrough you had? Maybe it was a mystical experience, or a moment of divine clarity, or a practice that unlocked something powerful inside you. You shared it, and instead of feeling free, you felt exposed, empty, vulnerable, like the magic had been leaked out of the moment. That's not just psychology, that's spiritual physics. Energy follows attention, and when your attention is turned outward, when it's chasing reactions, approval, or curiosity, you pull your power out of the inner sanctum and pour it into the open. You disrobe your spirit before eyes that may not see. Not every space is safe for sacred knowledge. Not every listener has earned the weight of your truth. And not every moment is the right time to share what's been given to you in silence. Silence, by the way, is not absence. It is presence at its highest form. It is containment. It is compression. It is what gives power to your energy before it becomes action, before it becomes form. And when you choose to hold back, to keep something sacred within your own energetic space, you are not hiding, you are protecting. You are preserving the voltage of your inner fire. There's a reason masters speak in riddles, a reason prophets speak in parables, a reason mystics go into retreat. It's not that they can't explain, it's that language is limited and energy is sacred. There's something profoundly spiritual about discretion, something holy about choosing not to say the thing that wants to be said, because in that moment you're aligning with wisdom instead of impulse. And that's when you become dangerous, in the best way, when you can hold spiritual power without bleeding it out to prove you have it. But this isn't just about not talking, it's about discernment, knowing what your energy is doing when you speak, when you share, when you teach. Every act of revelation has an echo. When you tell someone how you manifest your reality and they doubt you, they don't just disagree, they send an energetic contradiction into your field. And if your practice is still fragile, still blooming, that doubt can tangle with your belief and begin to unravel it. That's why the ancients said, "Do not cast pearls before swine." It's not an insult, it's an energetic principle. A pearl is formed in silence, in darkness, over time. When it's thrown carelessly, it shatters. It's not the swine's fault. It's the lack of reverence in the act of throwing. You must become the guardian of your own temple. That means knowing where your boundaries are, not just physical or emotional, but energetic. Who gets to know what you're practicing? Who gets to hear about your dreams, your awakenings, your sacred moments? This is not about hiding in fear. This is about standing in spiritual sovereignty. You are not obligated to explain yourself to anyone. You do not need to translate your truth into words that make others comfortable. You do not owe anyone access to the mystery that lives inside of you. Some things are too powerful to be spoken. They are meant to be lived, breathed, protected. Let your energy speak for you. Let your presence be the teaching. Let your silence be the sword that cuts through illusion. And if you're wondering, well, what can I share? That's a good question. One that deserves more than a quick answer. Because the truth is, it depends. It depends on your readiness. It depends on the space. It depends on whether you are rooted in your power or leaking it in search of validation. It's not about withholding out of fear. It's about preserving from wisdom. You wouldn't hand a child a lit torch and ask them to dance with it. Why would you hand your most potent insight to someone who hasn't earned the reverence to receive it? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. You've probably heard the phrase, knowledge is power, but in the world of true spiritual work, that saying only tells half the truth. Because in this realm, knowledge isn't just power, it's frequency, and that frequency has to be protected. What you know energetically affects who you are. That's why the great mystery traditions, the ones hidden behind locked doors, encoded texts and veiled symbols, never handed out their secrets to just anyone, not because they were elitist, but because they understood the law of secrecy. This law isn't man-made. It's not a rule created by priests or gurus. It's embedded into the fabric of spiritual evolution itself. The more powerful the knowledge, the more silence it requires. In the ancient mystery schools of Egypt, Greece, and beyond, spiritual initiation wasn't about memorizing mantras or visualizing outcomes. It was about proving you were worthy to carry the current. The initiate would pass through tests, not just physical but energetic. Could they withstand pressure without speaking? Could they witness the inner fire without flinching? Could they contain the knowledge they were given without broadcasting it into the winds? Silence wasn't a punishment, it was a gate. Because the moment sacred knowledge leaves your lips carelessly, it begins to dissipate. The current gets thinner, the energy gets looser, and the results? Diminished, diluted, even dangerous. Franz Bardon, one of the most respected modern hermeticists, warned very clearly, never reveal magical methods to the unprepared, not because it's forbidden, but because the force behind those methods will react. Every sacred act exists within a spiritual voltage. If you hand that voltage to someone who doesn't understand its charge, it will either short-circuit or explode. Eliphas Levi said something similar in his work on high magic. He wrote, "To reveal a secret to one unworthy to receive it is to profane it. To profane a secret is to lose it. And you've probably felt this without even knowing it. You share a deep, mystical truth, and it loses its shine. You try to explain a breakthrough, and suddenly it stops working the way it did. You pass along a ritual that came to you in meditation, and then wonder why it feels empty now. You didn't do anything wrong, but you forgot the law. Spiritual energy is designed to be earned, not traded. When something sacred is passed too easily, it recoils, not as punishment, but as protection. Because there are frequencies on this planet that only open when your vibration matches the reverence they require. The Hermetic tradition understood this deeply. To know, to dare, to will, and to keep silent. Those were the 4 pillars of the adept. And it's that last one, to keep silent, that most modern seekers overlook. In a world built on sharing, posting, and broadcasting, silence almost feels like a betrayal of the self. But in spiritual terms, Silence is the highest form of trust. You're telling the universe, I can hold this, I can carry this. I don't need to be seen to believe that what I have is real. Because here's the truth you weren't taught. The moment you share something sacred without sacred alignment, you release part of its potency. Imagine receiving a divine code, an energetic imprint of healing insight or transformation. That code lives in your field like a burning ember, but the moment you speak it too soon, it becomes smoke. Still there, but no longer capable of igniting others the way it did you. That's what happens when power is spoken prematurely. It doesn't disappear, it diffuses, and sometimes what diffuses doesn't come back. It's easy to think you're helping when you share your practices. You might feel inspired, full of light, eager to awaken others. But here's what the ancients knew. Truth is not taught through speech. It's transferred through frequency, and frequency doesn't move through mouths. It moves through presence, through integrity, through quiet alignment with what is real. There are sacred codes living within you right now. Codes of healing, codes of remembering, codes that could change lives. But not all codes are meant to be spoken. Some are meant to be lived until they become embodied. Some are meant to be whispered only to the soul. And some are meant to remain sealed until the one before you is ready to receive not the information, but the vibration. If you've ever tried to share something deeply spiritual and watched the other person's eyes glaze over, that wasn't a failure. It was a mismatch in readiness. A reminder from the universe that not all truths land where they're thrown. And here's the deeper lesson. When you speak something that isn't ready to be spoken, you carry the karma of its distortion. Because once a sacred teaching is released into misunderstanding, it begins to echo. It gets twisted, diluted, copied, mocked, and reassembled in ways that you never intended. And though you meant well, the energy you passed on has now been reshaped into something you can no longer control. That's why true masters speak so little. That's why ancient traditions required vows of silence. That's why even now certain teachings only come through dreams, symbols, or inner transmission, because the universe has always known. The louder the truth, the quicker it fades. You don't need to protect truth because it's weak. You protect it because it's a lie. And just like any living force, it needs a container. It needs warmth. It needs space to breathe. And the moment you let it out into the cold world of ego, performance, and reaction, it starts to die. So ask yourself, before you share that next insight, is this mine to speak? Has it been digested, integrated, and lived in my body, or am I trying to prove that I know something sacred by exposing it to someone who... Because if you're leaking your power just to feel seen, you're betraying the very force that gave it to you in the first place. And spiritual power doesn't return to those who treat it like entertainment. But here's the beauty in all of this. You don't need to explain your magic for it to work. You don't need to post your practices for them to be real. You don't need to open the temple gates to prove you've entered the sanctuary. In fact, the more you protect what you've been given, the more it multiplies within you. Every time you open your mouth, you open a field. Most people think words are just sound, vibrations that vanish after they're spoken. But when it comes to spiritual truth, words are seeds, and once planted they grow. Not just in the minds of others, but in the invisible realms all around you. When you share something sacred, it doesn't just reach the listener. It radiates outward into your auric field, into the ether, into the multidimensional layers of energy that surround your body. And if your field isn't strong enough, if you're not fully grounded, sealed, or aware, then what you say can begin to unravel the very power you're trying to embody. Your aura is not just a spiritual concept. It's your energetic skin, the electromagnetic boundary that filters what comes in and what goes out. When you speak about spiritual practices, magical experiences, or divine revelations without discernment, you create openings in that skin. Tiny rips, microscopic tears, moments of vulnerability. That's when the energy vampires appear. You've felt them before. The person who listens to your story and somehow walks away with your enthusiasm. The friend who encourages you to share your latest vision, only to leave you feeling tired, deflated, even dizzy. The stranger who asks what you've been doing lately, and as soon as you describe your practice, something about it stops working. This isn't just coincidence. It's energetic transfer. Not everyone who listens is listening with love. Some people listen with hunger. When you speak from a place of unguarded excitement, and someone listens from a place of lack, they begin to pull. Not consciously or maliciously, but energetically. They absorb the radiance of your words because your field is open, and theirs is hungry. And you? You walk away wondering where the glow went. That's how reverse manifestation happens. You speak your dream out loud, too soon, too often, or to the wrong ears, and suddenly it starts slipping away. You lose motivation, you get distracted, obstacles appear. The dream begins to feel distant, hollow, unreachable, because the act of oversharing can energetically drain the charge you were building in silence. And it's not just energy that can be taken. It's ideas, visions, insights. There's a spiritual theft that happens in subtle ways, when your inspired download becomes someone else's strategy, when your sacred practice ends up repackaged and sold without your permission, when your inner knowing becomes someone else's content. You may feel like you're just talking, but in truth, you're transmitting, you're projecting frequency. And when that frequency reaches the wrong receptors, those not aligned with the integrity of your path, it doesn't just land awkwardly, it echoes, it magnetizes. You must understand this. Your words are invitations. Every time you speak about energy, spirit, or sacred process, you send out a signal. That signal doesn't just reach people, it reaches beings, entities, frequencies, forces, some aligned, some neutral, some parasitic. Not every being that hears you has your growth in mind. And when you speak of sacred work without shielding, intention, or spiritual hygiene, you may be drawing in energies that aren't just curious, they're opportunistic. They want access. They want to ride your frequency without doing the work to earn it. And the more you talk, the more you attract. You think you're sharing for connection, but you may be casting a net into invisible waters, pulling in things that don't belong, and once they're in your field, they don't leave easily. Have you ever shared something powerful, something raw and beautiful, and then felt off for days afterward? Maybe you felt scattered, anxious, more reactive, like your center had shifted and you couldn't quite get it back. That's not your imagination. Your words opened a portal and something stepped in. Now you're not just navigating your own energy, you're sifting through the debris of what was magnetized to your vibration. The consequences of disclosure aren't always instant. Sometimes they unfold subtly. A slight disruption in your meditation, a dream that leaves you shaken, an increase in resistance, fatigue, or unexplained setbacks. It's not a punishment, it's an imbalance. You've let energy out without sealing it. You've opened yourself to feedback loops you didn't consent to. You've handed out your spiritual blueprint without asking if the room was worthy to receive it. This is why discretion is not just wise, it's protective. It keeps your auric field coherent. It keeps your power rooted in your body. It ensures that the things you are growing in silence are allowed to bloom without external interference. Imagine your words like ripples on a still lake. Every time you speak of the sacred, those ripples go out, but they also come back, sometimes with clarity, sometimes with distortion, sometimes with attachments you didn't ask for. And if you're not energetically prepared to receive what those ripples return, you'll spend more time cleaning your field than cultivating your light. That's why some teachings are transmitted in silence. Why some rituals are done alone, in the dark, without words. Why true initiates spend years practicing before they ever speak a syllable of their knowing. It's not to create mystique, it's to protect themselves from the karmic doors that open when energy is mishandled. Because when you reveal the sacred to someone who mocks it, disbelieves it, or uses it for gain, you carry part of the karmic weight for that reaction. You became the channel. You became the access point. And what flowed through you now leaves an imprint. That's why it's not just about what you say, it's about when you say it, who you say it to, why you're saying it, and what state you're in when you release that energy into the world. Words are spells, and every spell has a cost if cast unconsciously. So if you want to stay spiritually safe, not just protected but whole, then begin by reclaiming your words. Speak less, feel more, and when you do speak, do so as if the unseen is listening, because it is. And the moment you realize that your voice is a tuning fork for spiritual energy, you'll stop using it carelessly. You'll learn to wield your silence like a sword. You'll learn to close the doors you've left open. You'll begin to speak only when the vibration is aligned, the moment is right, and your field is sealed. That is how you protect your energy. That is how you become untouchable. There is a kind of silence that speaks louder than any sermon, a kind of stillness that doesn't mean nothing is happening, but that everything is happening beneath the surface. You've felt it before. That deep quiet after a powerful meditation, that sacred pause before a manifestation arrives, that intuitive moment when you know something profound is unfolding, but you also know not to speak it aloud. That's not hesitation, that's alignment. Silence, when chosen consciously, becomes a shield. It's the armor of the awakened, a barrier between your inner reality and the unpredictable energies of the outer world. It doesn't just protect your peace, it protects your process. When you keep something sacred to yourself, you're not withholding out of fear, you're preserving its voltage, because silence holds energy, and what you hold builds. This is what most people miss. They think silence is passive. They think it's the absence of action. But in truth, silence is an active force, one of the most powerful in the entire spiritual universe. Neville Goddard knew this intimately. He taught that manifestation begins in the unseen, deep within the imaginal realm. And the key, he said, was to go within and shut the door. Not just metaphorically, but energetically. Shut the door to distraction. Shut the door to validation seeking. Shut the door to explanations, conversations, and approvals. Why? Because what is seeded in silence becomes sacred. It becomes yours. It becomes encoded with your vibration, uninterrupted, undiluted, untouched by the projections of others. Neville spoke of the inner secret, that sacred inner state where what you desire is already fulfilled, where you feel the thing is real without ever having to tell a soul. He taught that the moment you feel it within you, it is done. The rest is just unfolding. And if you speak too soon, you break the spell. You crack the energy before it has fully formed. You let it leak before it becomes anchored in your field. This is the spiritual power of silence. It is energetic compression, a kind of alchemical pressure that builds potency within you, like steam behind a sealed lid, like lightning in a glass jar. It doesn't disappear, it concentrates, and in that concentration lies your power. When you speak, energy expands. When you stay silent, energy charges. You're not just keeping things in, you're refining them, distilling them, shaping them into something so potent that when the time does come to speak, your words land like spells. Your truth doesn't just sound different, it feels different. Because it was born in the fire of restraint. It was nourished in the quiet where ego can't touch it. Silence gives spirit room to speak without interruption. It's how the universe knows you're serious, that you're not just chasing sensation, that you're willing to sit with power without flaunting it, that you trust the unfolding so much you don't need to narrate it. Because silence is not denial, it's agreement. Agreement with the divine timing of your life. Agreement with the invisible intelligence that's already orchestrating what comes next. When you stay silent, you're not saying no to the world. You're saying yes to the process. You're showing the universe that you're mature enough to hold the energy without releasing it prematurely. that you're aligned with the rhythm of becoming, not desperate for recognition. This is the same principle behind sacred gestation. A seed in the earth doesn't scream as it grows. A caterpillar in the cocoon doesn't narrate its metamorphosis. Powerful transformation requires containment, and the more powerful the transformation, the deeper the silence required. You might be in a season right now where everything inside you is shifting, where old beliefs are falling away and new visions are waking up, where you're being called into something bigger, but it hasn't fully arrived yet. You may feel the urge to talk about it, to explain it, to share every insight and synchronicity. But sometimes the most advanced spiritual move you can make is to say nothing at all, to let the magic root before it rises, to let the vision stabilize before it's spoken, to let the energy build so fully in your field that when you do move, when you do speak, when you do step into the world, it lands with undeniable force. That's the power of sacred silence. It sharpens your intuition. It strengthens your auric field. It teaches you patience, precision, presence. It turns you into someone who doesn't just talk about power, but someone who radiates it without needing to say a word. And that's the level you're being called into now. The level where your silence becomes your sanctuary, where your inner world becomes so rich, so alive, so aligned, that you no longer crave validation from the outside. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to announce your progress, because your energy speaks louder than your voice ever could. And that's when the universe begins to respond in a new way. It stops testing you with distractions. It starts entrusting you with deeper truths. It starts showing you visions that aren't for everyone, because now you've proven you can hold what's sacred without scattering it into the winds. You've become the temple, not the tour guide. And in this temple of silence, miracles begin to form. Not because you chase them, but because you've created the energetic environment where they can finally land. So if you've been wondering why things feel quieter lately, why spirit has gone inward, why your words feel fewer but your awareness feels deeper, trust that. You are being invited into the silence between the notes, the gap between the thought and the thing, the holy space where reality is born. Don't rush it. Don't explain it. Just breathe. Because in your silence you are agreeing with the universe. You are saying yes to the becoming. And the more deeply you say yes without speaking, the more loudly life will echo back. You are ready. You've probably heard that boundaries are important. But what most people don't realize is that spiritual boundaries are just as essential, if not more, than physical or emotional ones. Because every interaction, every conversation, every look you give or receive carries energy. You're not just exchanging words. You're exchanging frequency. And if you're not clear on where your spiritual boundaries begin and end, your energy becomes an open field, exposed, drained, uncentered. Think of your inner temple, the sacred space within you where your truth lives, where your power rests, where your guidance comes through. That temple wasn't built for tourists. It wasn't designed for every person you meet to walk through it, touch the walls, and peek behind the curtains. It's a sanctuary, and sanctuaries are meant to be protected. Spiritual boundaries are the energetic walls around that sanctuary. They're not rigid, they're not cold. They're intelligent, alive, responsive. They don't block out love, but they filter everything that comes in and out of your space. So what does that look like in your everyday life? It means not saying yes to every conversation, even if someone's curious about your practice. It means choosing when, how, and with whom you share your spiritual insights, not out of secrecy, but out of sovereignty. It means recognizing that just because someone asks doesn't mean you need to answer. That not every question deserves access to your sacred space. It means noticing how you feel after an interaction, not just during it. Do you feel grounded, clear, and empowered? Or do you walk away feeling like your center was scattered across the room? Your energy tells the truth. Always. And one of the most powerful ways to protect your spiritual boundaries is to build a relationship with your energy field. Imagine for a moment that your auric field is like a house. When your boundaries are strong, the doors are locked, the windows are sealed, the lights inside glow from a place of peace. But when your boundaries are weak, it's like leaving the front door open during a storm. Leaves blow in, dust settles, strangers wander through, and suddenly your sacred space doesn't feel so sacred anymore. You start feeling anxious for no reason, unfocused, tired, like something is off but you can't quite name it. Those are signs that your energetic boundaries have been breached, that you've overexposed your temple, and the fix isn't always retreat, sometimes it's reinforcement. One of the simplest yet most powerful tools for spiritual protection is visualization, not because it's imaginary, but because your mind and energy field are directly linked. What you see internally, you begin to embody externally. So let's do this now. Close your eyes and imagine a cloak draped over your shoulders, a cloak of deep indigo or obsidian black. It shimmers, not to be seen, but to conceal. It flows around you, light yet impenetrable. This is your cloak of discretion. It moves with you, it protects your frequency, it filters what comes in and conceals what should remain within. With this cloak around you, you're no longer leaking your light. You're containing it, refining it, letting your presence speak without revealing every sacred detail behind your glow. This cloak doesn't hide your truth. It shields it until the moment is right. And when someone approaches you with questions, curiosities, or projections, this cloak reminds you, you don't owe access to everyone. Not every hand deserves to hold your essence. Not every conversation deserves your deepest knowing. You are allowed to choose. In fact, your spiritual safety depends on it. Now, here's how you know you've overexposed yourself. You share something powerful and, afterward, you feel foggy, disconnected from your own clarity. You reveal a part of your practice and suddenly, it doesn't feel as vibrant anymore. You open up to someone and even though they seemed interested, you walk away feeling drained or even subtly resentful. These aren't just emotional cues, they're energetic feedback. Your field is telling you, we let too much out, we let something in, it's time to reset. Energetic integrity means that your actions match your inner wisdom, that you don't give away what your spirit told you to keep sacred, that you listen to your intuition when it whispers, not here, not now, and when you ignore that whisper, you feel it in your body, in your nervous system, in your dreams. It shows up as spiritual fatigue, as a dimming of your intuitive light, as a strange sense that something precious has been left behind. But here's the good news. You can restore your boundaries, you can call your energy back, you can wrap yourself in the cloak of discretion, and remember that your path is yours, that your temple is yours, that your sacred knowing doesn't need to be shared to be real. In fact, the more you protect it, the more real it becomes. Because the universe honors the container. It honors the one who can hold power without needing to display it. It entrusts deeper truths to those who don't parade them. It amplifies the energy of the one who respects their own light. So if you felt scattered lately, if you felt like your insights aren't landing the way they used to, if you've been wondering why your energy feels thinner, more sensitive, more exposed, it may be time to check your boundaries. Ask yourself, have I been sharing from alignment or from impulse? Have I been holding my power or bleeding it for attention? Have I honored my inner temple or opened the doors too wide? And whatever the answer is, just know this. You can come back home to yourself. You can seal the temple. You can whisper back to the universe, I'm ready to protect what matters. I'm ready to keep the sacred sacred. I'm ready to speak only when the moment is true, and to let my silence become my strength. And when you do that, the power that lives within you won't just return, it will rise. You are not just a seeker of truth, you are a steward of it. And when sacred knowledge finds you, whether through meditation, intuition, initiation, or divine download, It doesn't come empty-handed. It brings with it a responsibility, a weight, a choice. You owe something to that knowledge, and you owe something to yourself. You owe reverence. You owe protection. You owe alignment between what you know and what you do with it. Because spiritual knowledge is not like ordinary information, it carries a frequency, a blueprint, and once you receive it, you become its custodian, not its owner, not its broadcaster, its guardian. And guardians don't just share because someone asks, they share because the moment is aligned, because the energy is clean, because the vessel they're pouring into is ready. This is the heart of spiritual responsibility, knowing that what you say can create and destroy, that the words you speak can shape someone's reality, ignite someone's faith, or confuse someone beyond repair. Rhonda Byrne, author of The Secret, spoke often about the law of attraction and the ability to shape your life through thought and feeling. But what many overlook is the subtle power in how we communicate that truth. She didn't just say, think positively. She taught that your energy attracts your outcomes, and that means every teaching you offer carries a vibration. Every explanation, every insight, every helpful tip is also a signal to the universe, to the other person, and to your own energy field. That's why Esther Hicks, channeling Abraham, emphasizes alignment first. She often says, you cannot create in another's experience, no matter how much you want to help, no matter how clearly you see what they need. If they're not a vibrational match for the wisdom, it won't land. And worse, it may backfire. Because spiritual truth delivered too early can become spiritual distortion. That's when teaching turns to leaking. You start off with the purest intention. You want to uplift, you want to guide, you want to share the gold you've found in your inner cave. But if your motivation is mixed with urgency or ego or a desire to be seen as wise, it's no longer service, it's leakage. The energy behind your words begins to wobble. The receiver feels it even if they can't name it. They may resist you or agree with you outwardly, but feel unsettled inside, and you walk away wondering what went wrong. What went wrong is that you weren't sharing from overflow, you were sharing from incompletion, from a part of you that still needed validation, or from a moment of anxiety, afraid that if you didn't share it now, the insight would disappear. But truth doesn't vanish when you hold it. It deepens, it roots, it becomes wisdom, and wisdom is what teaches, not information. There is an unseen consequence to trying to help too soon. It's not always visible, but it's always felt. When you pour energy into someone who isn't ready, three things can happen. First, they reject it, not because it's wrong, but because it's too early. And that rejection can leave a scar on your confidence. You start second-guessing your knowing. Second, they misinterpret it. They take your sacred truth and twist it through their own filters. It becomes something else, something less pure. And now that energy has your name on it, even though it no longer reflects you. And third, they become dependent. They didn't earn the insight, so they don't know how to integrate it, and now every time they feel confused, they turn to you, not their own inner wisdom. You've become the crutch, not the catalyst. That's how even the noblest intentions can lead to energetic entanglement. That's why spiritual responsibility isn't about how much you know. It's about how you hold what you know. Do you honor its timing? Do you discern its audience? Do you ask your higher self before you speak? Or do you rush to help because helping gives you purpose? This is one of the hardest truths on the path. You can't save anyone. You can only model alignment. You can only radiate the frequency of your own truth so clearly, so consistently, that it activates others through resonance, not persuasion. The old paradigm of being the teacher or healer is crumbling. The new model is embodiment, not explanation. You don't teach love by describing it. You teach it by being it. You don't awaken others by forcing insight into their ears. You awaken them by living so fully in your own light that they feel safe to find theirs. That is the deepest form of service. Silent, grounded, unattached. So before you speak your next spiritual truth, pause. Feel into your intention. Ask yourself, am I sharing from overflow or from anxiety? Am I speaking because I've been guided to, or because I need to be seen? Has this truth fully lived in my body yet, or is it still becoming? And most importantly, is this person ready? You'll know the answer not from their words, but from their vibration. Their presence will open like a flower when the timing is right, and until then your silence is more sacred than any teaching. Remember, the most powerful transformations are not the ones you orchestrate, they're the ones you witness. So trust that. Trust the timing, trust the sacredness of what you've been given, and trust yourself to know when to speak and when to simply hold the light. Because that's what spiritual responsibility looks like, not being the loudest voice in the room, but being the clearest signal, not trying to lead the way for others, but becoming so aligned that the path reveals itself wordlessly through you. Let me tell you a story. She had just come back from a 7-day silent retreat. Blissed out, glowing, vibrating with an intensity she'd never known before. Something had shifted. She felt reborn, awakened, like she'd unlocked the next layer of her spiritual, and she did what so many of us do in that moment. She shared it. She posted photos, wrote about her breakthroughs, described the visions, the downloads, the bliss. She thought it would inspire people. She thought it would help. And for a few days, it did. But then came the crash. Suddenly she couldn't sleep. She kept waking up with heavy dreams, images of shadows, chaos, confusion. Her mind felt scattered, her body depleted. The practices that once energized her now felt dull. Her heart didn't feel open anymore, it felt exposed. She didn't realize it at first, but her awakening had triggered a response. Not just from people in her life, but from the invisible layers of reality she'd momentarily pierced through. Because when you share the sacred too quickly, without containment, you don't just invite admiration, you attract projection, jealousy, skepticism, energetic interference. People start unconsciously hooking into your light. They attach their questions to your certainty, their hunger to your fullness. And if your field isn't sealed, you start to carry it all. The praise, the doubt, the expectation, and truth begins to fracture. It's not that she was wrong to share, it's that she hadn't stabilized. She hadn't allowed the energy to root before exposing it. Her awakening was real, but it hadn't yet become embodied. It was still raw, still forming, and when she opened it to the world, she opened herself to attacks she wasn't prepared for. This isn't fear-based. It's energetic reality, and it's why so many people have their highs on the path, those euphoric moments of expansion followed by sudden, inexplicable lows. They think they're being punished, but they've simply overexposed what was meant to be nurtured in silence. The same happens in magical communities. There's a story, often whispered but rarely admitted publicly, about a young practitioner who discovered a powerful ritual from a lineage she barely understood. She performed it once and felt an enormous rush of energy, visions, psychic impressions, a surge of influence. So naturally she wanted to teach it. She began offering it online, selling the steps, recording the chants, turning a sacred key into a product. And for a few months it worked. Until it didn't. One by one things began to unravel. Clients experienced strange energetic backlash. She began waking with marks on her skin. She started forgetting words mid-sentence. Her guides, once loud and clear, went silent. Something in her spiritual field had collapsed. Not because the ritual was fake, but because it was never meant to be shared like that. It wasn't hers to give away. She hadn't asked permission. She hadn't earned the energetic authority to transmit it. She'd broadcasted a frequency that required protection, context, and reverence, and in doing so she cracked her own container. That's the cost of carelessness with sacred things. Not because spirit is punishing you, but because the universe is always balancing frequency, When something is used out of alignment, it returns to balance, not to shame you, but to teach you. And here's the deeper trap, the allure of being the wise one. When you start to awaken, when insights flood your being, when synchronicities affirm your every move, it's tempting to step into that role, to become the guide, the teacher, the channel, the light. And maybe you are. But the moment that identity becomes a performance, you've already lost the thread. Because the path of wisdom doesn't require an audience. It requires humility. The danger is subtle. You begin to shape your speech so it sounds enlightened. You share your practices not to serve, but to be seen. You start to believe that your value is measured by how spiritual others think you are. That's when spiritual boasting begins. It doesn't always look like arrogance. Sometimes it looks like helpfulness. But underneath there's a hunger to be recognized, a hunger to be important, a hunger to prove you've touched the divine. And that hunger opens you up to decay, not physical decay, but spiritual. The light that once flowed through you freely now becomes constricted, because it's being filtered through ego. The transmissions feel forced, the insights feel recycled, the connection starts to flicker. You're no longer a clear vessel, you're a persona. And the deeper cost? You lose intimacy with the sacred, because the sacred doesn't stay where it's paraded. It doesn't linger where it's commodified. It retreats, it waits, it watches, and if you're lucky, it returns when you're ready to listen again. The good news? You can always return to humility. You can always close the door, sit in silence, and whisper to the universe, I forgot who I was. I forgot what this was about. I'm ready to listen again. The sacred always hears you. But let these stories be a mirror. Let them show you what happens when power is misused, even unconsciously. Let them remind you that your path is not a performance. Your awakening is not a product. Your truth doesn't need to be explained to be real. You are not here to impress anyone. You are here to become so deeply aligned with your own essence that you no longer crave applause. You are here to remember the difference between radiating and broadcasting. One is natural, the other is manufactured, and the world doesn't need more spiritual performers. It needs more sacred vessels. Some truths are not meant to be spoken, not because they're dangerous in themselves, but because your voice is a spiritual key, and when you name certain things out loud, you activate energy. You stir forces. You send ripples into the unseen. There's a reason ancient initiates were taught in symbols, not sentences, why their lips were sealed with oaths of silence, and their teachings cloaked in metaphor. It wasn't to hoard knowledge, it was to protect it, because not everything sacred survives the open air, and not every ear deserves to hear what the soul has earned. So let's get clear. There are things you must never speak aloud, not because you're hiding them, but because you're holding them in their highest form. To protect your integrity, to protect the energy, to protect the very vibration that gave birth to them in the first place. First, your ritual blueprints. The specific steps of your practices, especially those that involve summoning, invocation, or energy manipulation, are sacred technology. They're not recipes to be passed around like spiritual cookbooks. They're frequencies encoded in your unique vibration. When you share them openly, you weaken the current, because that blueprint wasn't designed for general use, it was designed for you. Each element you use, each candle, word, gesture, or time of day, is part of an energetic architecture, and when others copy it without matching the vibration you carry, they distort it. And the worst part, that distortion echoes back into your field. You end up feeling your own ritual lose its potency because others have tried to run your frequency on the wrong operating system. Second, your magical sigils and personal mantras. These are not decorations. They are portals. A sigil carries your intention in geometric form. A mantra carries your will in vibrational sound. When you create one or receive one, You are birthing a direct line of communication between your consciousness and the invisible forces that shape your life. Sharing your sigil with someone is like handing them your house key. Saying your mantra out loud to a curious stranger is like shouting your password in a crowded room. You might feel generous in the moment, but the energetic consequences can be serious. The force behind a sigil weakens when it's exposed. The power of a mantra dilutes when it's spoken without the devotion it was born in. These tools are alive. They're part of your spiritual DNA. Treat them that way. Third, your initiation experiences. There are moments in your life that are not meant to be translated. Moments when something eternal touched your being. When you were shown something you can't unsee, and you crossed a threshold inside yourself and returned, changed. You might want to tell the world about it, to describe the colors, the beings, the lessons. But often trying to explain your initiation profanes it. Because initiations are sacred contracts. They happen between you and spirit, between you and your higher self, between you and the divine archetypes that guide your path. When you speak of them too soon or too widely, you risk breaking that contract, not literally but energetically. You disperse the energy that was meant to anchor into your bones. Let those moments integrate. Let them become who you are. Let the truth of your initiation speak through your actions, not your mouth. Fourth, your psychic insights about others. This one is subtle, but vital. If you are intuitive, clairvoyant, empathic, you may often receive impressions about the people around you. You may see what they cannot. Patterns, shadows, potential. But just because you see it doesn't mean you're meant to say it. Speaking your psychic perception without permission is a form of energetic violence. It bypasses boundaries, it overrides sovereignty, and it can invite karmic entanglement you didn't ask for. Yes, your insight might be accurate. Yes, it might even be helpful. But if it's delivered before someone is ready, or without their consent, it can trigger trauma, defensiveness, or worse, a false sense of dependence on you. Being spiritually gifted does not make you a spiritual authority. Your gift is not permission, and your perception is not prophecy. True wisdom waits for invitation. And finally, your inner revelations from guides or source. When you receive direct communication, whether from your higher self, spirit guides, ancestors, or source itself, it is meant for you. It's not content. It's not a story. It's a transmission calibrated to your vibration. You can translate it, you can live it, but if you try to articulate it too quickly, you distort the purity of what you are shown. Not everything is meant to become a teaching. Some revelations are seeds. They need darkness, silence, space. When you rush to share, you expose the seed to too much light too soon. It dries up, it fails to root, it loses the power it was meant to grow into. Learn to hold what you're shown in reverent silence. Write it down, breathe with it, ask it questions, let it move through you, but don't announce it until it becomes a living part of your reality. And finally, this may be the most important. Be extremely mindful when naming certain forces. Names are keys. In many traditions, to speak the name of a spirit, deity, or entity is to invoke its presence, not just mentally, energetically. When you speak the name of a being, especially one associated with magic, astral realms, or old world systems, you open a line of communication, and unless you've been trained to hold that line, you may find yourself in spiritual territory you weren't prepared for. That's why certain names are kept hidden in grimoires, why certain invocations are done in silence, why the most ancient names were only ever thought, never spoken. The sound carries force, and that force responds. So before you name the being, before you call the guide, before you chant the phrase, ask yourself, am I grounded? Am I clear? Am I aligned? And most importantly, am I called to speak this now, or am I doing it for effect? Because in the world of energy, intent is everything, and the unseen watches for alignment, always. There comes a moment, often quiet, often still, when you're holding a truth inside you, a realization, a download, a vision that feels so real, so alive, it begs to be spoken. But just because something wants to be said doesn't mean it's time to say it. This is where discernment becomes your most powerful spiritual ally. Discernment is not judgment, it's not fear, it's not withholding, it's listening. Listening for alignment, listening to the invisible signal that tells you whether your truth is meant to be shared or safeguarded a little longer. And that signal? It doesn't come from your mind, it comes from your higher self. Your higher self is the version of you who already sees the whole map, who knows what your soul came here to protect and what it came here to proclaim, who understands that every word spoken shifts energy not just for you, but for everyone who hears it. So before you speak, ask. Ask inwardly, is this mine to share? Is this moment true? And then feel into the body. Not the brain, the body. Because the body never lies. It will constrict or expand. It will lean in or lean away. That's where the energetic recoil comes in. Think of this as your internal compass, a somatic tool for spiritual clarity. Before speaking, visualize yourself sharing the thing you're holding, whether it's an insight, a practice, a story, or a piece of spiritual knowledge. Then pause. Feel what happens inside. Do you feel your heart expand, your chest open, your breath deepen, or do you feel a subtle clench, a tightness in the gut, a slight tension in the throat? That recoil is your higher self saying, not now, not here, not this way. And it's not rejection, it's protection. Because every sacred truth has a timeline, and sharing it before that timeline ripens can stunt its growth or contaminate its frequency. Sometimes what you're meant to share isn't wrong, it's just early. And when you honor that timing, the truth becomes more powerful, it grows in clarity, it aligns with the right ears, it lands where it's meant to, not scattered in noise, but grounded in presence. So how do you align with divine timing? You let go of the rush. You stop performing your awakening and start living it. You stop broadcasting and begin embodying. Because here's what most people forget. There are moments when your silence teaches more than your words ever could. Moments when the vibration you carry is the lesson. When the energy you hold is more instructional than anything you might say. And the people who are truly ready for your wisdom, they'll feel it before you speak it. You won't have to convince them. You won't have to explain. They'll recognize the truth by the way you walk, by the way you listen, by the way your energy moves through space. And when the moment is right, when the room is sacred, when the listener is open, when your words are in service and not in ego, you'll know. Because you won't be trying to speak. The words will rise on their own. They'll come through clear, precise, alive. That's divine timing. Not forced, not planned, but guided. And that's what true spiritual sharing is. It's not marketing, it's not performance, it's not spiritual storytelling just for the sake of being interesting. It's resonance, it's alignment. It's the universe whispering through you at the exact moment someone else is ready to remember. And the more you practice this discernment, the easier it becomes. You start to notice the difference between the voice that wants to be heard and the voice that wants to serve. You start to sense when silence is the most powerful thing in the room. You begin to feel safe in your own containment. And ironically, that safety, that ability to not speak, becomes the very thing that deepens your presence. It's magnetic. Because people can feel when someone is not leaking energy. They feel the fullness, the potency, the quiet confidence that says, I'm not afraid to be still with what I know. And that kind of presence, it doesn't just attract curiosity, it attracts reverence. It draws in those who are truly ready, not just hungry for novelty. That's the difference between helping and entangling, between offering wisdom and bleeding power. So start asking, before you share, before you post, before you answer a spiritual question just because someone asks. Pause, take a breath, tune in, ask your higher self, is this mine to speak right now? And trust what you feel. If there's any recoil, don't force it. If there's expansion, speak, but speak slowly. Speak from the place that isn't trying to impress. Speak from the silence you've sat with long enough to know it by name. That's how truth becomes transformational, not by being loud, but by being right on time. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember this. Your greatest revelations don't need validation. Your most sacred truths don't need applause. They only need one thing: your alignment. Because when you speak from alignment, you don't just share wisdom, you become it. Energy is your most sacred currency. Every thought, every intention, every word carries a frequency, and that frequency leaves a trail. It echoes out into your life and into the lives of others. And just like you clean your physical body each day, your spiritual body needs cleansing, sealing, and recalibration. This is spiritual hygiene. It's not a ritual for the few. It's a necessity for anyone walking a conscious path, especially when you're holding sacred knowledge, receiving downloads, or interacting with others energetically. Without daily hygiene, your auric field becomes porous, open, vulnerable. But with simple tools, you can stay clear, grounded, and spiritually sovereign. Let's begin with the basics. First, aura cleansing. Your aura is your energetic skin. It absorbs, transmits, and reflects subtle energies all day long. And just like your skin can get dusty or sweaty, your aura picks up residue. Thoughts from others, energies from spaces, fragments from conversations, projections, even praise. You may not notice it at first, but over time that build-up makes your energy feel dull, scattered, or heavy. The solution? Water, breath, sound, and light. Take showers not just for your body, but for your field. As the water runs over you, visualize it washing away all cords, residues, and attachments that aren't yours. See the energy going down the drain, returning to the earth to be transmuted. Use your breath to clear. Inhale deeply, hold, exhale with sound, like a sigh or a tone. Sound carries intention. Let it shake off what doesn't belong. Use visualization. Envision golden or violet light pouring through your crown, moving through your body like liquid light, pushing out everything that is not aligned with your highest self. Do this daily, especially after sharing, teaching, or intense emotional conversations. Next, grounding. Without grounding, your energy floats. You become uncentered, unpresent, vulnerable to other people's moods, thoughts, and frequencies. And the more spiritual work you do, the more grounding you'll need, not less. Because the higher the energy, the deeper the root required. So ground yourself. Walk barefoot on earth if you can. Eat grounding foods. Root vegetables, warm teas. Sit in stillness and visualize roots growing from your feet or spine deep into the earth. Feel her holding you. Let her hold you. Speak this aloud if needed. I am grounded. I am connected to the earth. I am safe in my body. Now sealing. After spiritual work, teaching, sharing, or ritual, always seal your field. Imagine your aura as a sphere of light around you, bright, whole, intact. Visualize it zipping up from your feet to your crown like a suit of divine armor. Then say something like, I call all of my energy back to me now. I seal my field in light. Only truth, only love, only alignment may enter. That one intention, spoken from presence, is a shield. It tells the universe, I am aware, I am sovereign, I am choosing what touches me. Then there's the invocation of silence. When you carry something sacred, something not meant to be shared yet, you can protect it with a spiritual seal. Close your eyes. Place your hands over your heart or navel. Speak softly, either aloud or internally. This truth is sacred. I seal it in love and light. It will unfold when the time is right and not before. You can even create a mantra or power phrase for yourself, a private phrase that you use whenever you're holding something powerful within. It could be as simple as, I protect what is holy. Each time you say it, you reinforce the sacred shield around your knowing. This is the practice of spiritual sovereignty. You're not just managing energy, you're honoring it. Now let's talk about something we rarely address: how to seal a teaching after receiving it. Imagine this. You've just read something profound, or received a direct download, or finished a ceremony where new truth opened within you. That energy is alive, raw, vibrant, but also delicate. And what most people do, they talk about it, post about it, break it open before it finishes rooting. Instead, you can seal the energy like planting a seed. Place your hands in prayer over your heart and say, I receive this teaching in full. I honor its unfolding. I hold it in stillness so it may root deeply. I do not rush its expression. I protect its power. Then breathe deeply and do nothing. That's the magic. Doing nothing. Letting the teaching live inside you, move through you, integrate into your energy before becoming a word or act. Let it become you before you explain it. And finally, one of the most underestimated tools of all, calling your energy back. Every time you speak, post, teach, or even think intensely about something, you send energy out. That's not a problem if you're conscious. But if you've been leaking, oversharing, or giving away your light without balance, it's time to recall your essence. It's simple. Close your eyes, take a few slow breaths. Fast say aloud or within, I now call all of my energy back to me, from every person, post, memory, and moment where I've overextended. I call it back, cleansed, cleared, and whole. I am fully present in my body. I am restored. Then feel it. Feel your light returning from across timelines, conversations, even glances. Let it pool back into your core. You'll feel warmer, fuller. Centered again. You've just performed energetic reclamation. These are not rituals for the elite. They are daily tools for the awakened. Practices of protection, practices of remembrance. Because your energy is sacred, your knowing is sacred. And every day you walk this path, you're not just learning to speak, you're learning how to hold silence with honor, to hold truth with grace, to hold your light without apology. And the more you protect what you carry, the more clearly Spirit can move through you, unfiltered, undistorted, unshaken. There will be times when your truth must be spoken, when what lives inside you begins to pulse, not out of urgency, but out of alignment. When the sacred doesn't want to stay hidden, it wants to be honored through you. And in those moments, you don't need to fear speaking, you simply need to speak with consciousness. Because wisdom was never meant to be locked away forever. It's not about hoarding insight. It's about discerning the when, the how, and the who. The sacred isn't silent because it's afraid. It's silent because it knows timing is everything. So if you feel called to share, ask yourself, is this the right moment? Is this the right person? Is my energy clear? Or am I sharing to be seen? Truth shared at the wrong time becomes noise. Truth shared in the right moment becomes transmission. And when the moment is true, it feels different. There's no strain, no pressure, no performance. There is simply the flow of something greater moving through you, not for your sake, but for service. That's the key. When wisdom becomes service, it becomes sacred. But how do you ensure that? You begin by creating what I call an energetic agreement. Before you speak, before you teach, reveal, or transmit anything, go inward. Ask your higher self, are we consenting to this moment together? Feel the answer. Do you feel expansion in your heart? Do you feel your throat softening, not tightening? Do you feel the presence of something larger than you guiding your words? That's consent with your deeper self. And if the answer is yes, then go one step further. Create a sacred listening space. That means you're not just blurting truths out in casual settings. You're building a container. Even if you're just having a one-on-one conversation, your energy can build a temple around your words. It starts with presence, with slowness, with honoring the space between the words. Before you speak, you might say internally, I now build a sacred space of truth. May only what serves highest light be spoken and received. May this moment be clean, aligned, and blessed. You don't need candles. You don't need a ceremony. Your attention is the ritual, and the person receiving your truth, they feel that. They feel that what you're sharing isn't entertainment, it's not information, it's not performance, it's medicine. Because you're not just speaking to them, you're speaking with spirit. You've made room for the divine in your communication. And when that happens, your words become more than sound, they become frequency, resonance. And you'll know the moment you're crossing that threshold. You feel your voice slowed down. You feel the silence between your words stretch wider. You'll feel a kind of stillness settle over the space. That's when you've entered sacred service. And here's the beauty of that space. You don't need to say much. In fact, the more powerful the energy, the fewer words are needed. Because sacred truth doesn't need explanation. It vibrates on its own. And when someone is ready for it, they don't just hear it, they remember it. It activates something in them, not because you pushed, but because you opened, and you trusted the moment. That's what sharing from alignment looks like. It's not a strategy. It's a surrender. You're not giving a speech. You're becoming a vessel. And if that person isn't ready, you don't force it. You release it. You go back into stillness, back into presence, back into the knowing that the moment will arise again when it's supposed to. Because you've made a promise to your own soul. I will only speak what is sacred, when it's safe, when it's true, and when it serves. That is your spiritual vow. Not silence out of fear, but silence as respect, not withholding as punishment, but as protection. And when you live by that vow, something miraculous begins to unfold. Your words become weightier, not heavy but magnetic. People lean in when you speak, not because you speak often, but because you speak with meaning. And that kind of energy, it changes lives. Not because you planned it, but because you aligned with it. Because you waited until wisdom stopped being about you and became about what flows through you. You don't just share anymore. You transmit. You don't just teach anymore, you awaken. And in doing so you become what the ancient ones always knew was the highest form of spiritual power. A keeper of the sacred who knows when to speak and when to simply shine.